So the Central Bank of Nigeria launched the Nigeria Foreign Exchange Code aimed at fostering transparency, ethical practices, and efficiency in the nation's foreign exchange market. And that was according to the CBN Governor while speaking in Abuja during the launch. I'm talking about Olayemi Cardoso. He explained that the FX Code sets clear and enforceable standards to address past malpractices and prevent a recurrence of systemic abuses that have undermined Nigeria's financial ecosystem. And so this morning we'll be talking more about this FX code and what it means for Nigeria's FX market. We have Muktar Mohammed, CEO Asher Investment Ltd, was actually joined me to look into this. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So first, I would like to get your thoughts on the introduction of this new FX code and if it can truly guarantee transparency and accountability in Nigeria's FX market.
Lincoln, you know what I always say about Nigeria is that we are not devolved documents, but with always implementation has been our issues. And as long as implementation is our issue, but when you look at the central bank, is not just implementation that is the issue. Also, you also have monitoring. Also, it's a bigger issue. Also, compliance and all that. So those are my take. And these are all administrative policy towards addressing the shortage. So if any of this policy is not going to drive in liquidity into the market, it will be an exercise in futility. That's the truth. So if you are doing all this code and then it's not bringing in liquidity, it will not work. We've seen that with a lot of policy that they've brought in. So the only way that this policy will work is if this policy will, at the end of the day, drive liquidity into the market. And again, how much are we able to make sure that there's compliance in terms of monitoring and compliance? We look at the Bureau de Change, you look at what the CBN have been doing with them. Even before this administration coming, there was no any area of monitoring. So this code is all about corporate governance, and it's just all about corporate governance. You want to improve your governance. You want to look at areas that will make it transparent and integrity. So they are all things very laudable policy, but again, depending on how much you are able to implement it and to get the desired results, it must drive liquidity into the market. If it doesn't, it will be an exercise in futility.
Okay, so you've said that this particular initiative is good, but implementation is key, and the scope of implementation is also another thing that we should consider. But then, let's even do a track back and look at what is to obtain before now. Now, some politically connected individuals, according to reports, and companies accessed FX at official rates, while others had to buy at inflated parallel market rates. Help us understand how this has compromised the system from time back up to this point.
Unfortunately, the government is culpable also. Even if you look at individuals politically exposed, the government is culpable. Even this current administration, remember when they came to power and we were having FX, and they gave FX for people to go to hash at a different rate, entirely different from what was even obtained in the official market. So definitely the government is culpable too. And when the government is culpable, what do you expect when there's compromise all over? I think this is due to lack of transparency, lack of corporate governance, lack of structure in the CBN, especially when it comes to FX. It has been an ongoing battle. So I don't even the current governor. I think he has been trying a lot to bring openness, transparency, integrity into the FX market, but it's going to meet a lot of challenges because there are a lot of people that think it should continue as it used to be. So I think for your question, yes, that has happened because there's no structure, and that has happened because the government also are part of the rot. When you give people want to go to hash, you give them a particular amount at a particular rate, even different from the official rate. Civil servants are going to go on a trip, extra code, you give them at a different rate. So I think that has been the problem. So for me, it was not just politically exposed people that were culpable. And if you look at politically exposed people, it was not all of them. It was those that were close to the corridor of power that were really, really culpable of what had happened. So for me, I think those things have lasted the test of time because we lack structure. So
Well,
that's why I'm also impressed with what Cardoso is trying to do,
yeah, I
bringing
understand.
structure into the CBN.
Yeah, I understand now that you are saying the government is also culpable, most especially those are the corridors of power. But we also saw the governor, that is the CBN governor, during his speech specifically mention bank board members, the chairs, managing directors, compliance officers. So without having to cast aspersions on these sets of people, does it mean that if there is no some sort of sanitization of the system, we will not be able to curb these institutional malfeasance?
Exactly, Lekon, you hit it. Exactly. Because again, when you look at bank chairmen, you look at, even customers, high net customers, were even giving FX at that official rate, depending on, like you say, depending on who you know. Compliance officers who were involved in round tipping. Now, the funny thing about those processes was that this money were taken on an official rate and taken to the black market and sold at a higher rate. So, and the CBN didn't come heavily on them. And when they come to on them, there are times that the CBN have banned some major banks from participating in the FX market for some time. And that has become an ongoing thing. You see them, they are suspended. But I think the CBN need to do more when it comes to that, not just suspending those banks from the FX market, but also making sure that any staff or any, whether it's the managing director, whether it's the chairman that are well capable, are also tried. And I mean, justice should be meted out to them because the situation whereby you just find a bank is always like a drop of water in that ocean. You know how this bank are awash with liquidity. So I think it will be good if they will be prosecuted. And the law is there for them to, that's an economic sabotage type of, that's an economic sabotage, and the law is there to prosecute them. So I think they must begin to think after all the sanctions, the individuals that are culpable should be tried.
It's quite interesting that you say this because we've seen situations whereby the CBN itself struggles to enforce compliance, most especially as it involves bank officials, FX dealers, those who have described as being behind the corridors of power, and those who have been found to bypass regulation and so to speak. What I'd like to find out is that should the CBN be the one to oversee the implementation of this FX code alongside every other kind of regulation, or maybe there should be an independent body that should sit on this?
We shouldn't think of an independent body. We are trying to create a lot of bottlenecks. You know, when it comes to that, who are the main distributors of FX at the CBN? I'm sure they have a particular department that is in charge of that, the financial regulatory and supervision. So it doesn't make sense for them to now begin to set up an independence body that will be in charge of just FX. And that is trying to also add bringing a lot of bottlenecks that are there. You see, why sometimes these are very difficult for the CBN to involve is that most of the staff also, remember, or most of them, either they are retired CBN staff or some of them, they also have bureau de change. They also have people that own those bureau de change, either through proxy. So those are part of the things that the CBN need to intelligently investigate to see who are these people, why are they not, do they have an interest there? So those are what the CBN governor will do today. It's not that they cannot implement, but because they are part of it, they will not want to also jeopardize that. There are people that are gaining from challenges that we are going through. That's why these FS challenges, there are a lot of people that have made so much from it. And like you mentioned, the bank officials, especially compliance officers in the bank, remember those days that it was even available for when you go to the bank, you want to get traveling allowance. If you don't know somebody in the bank, you are not giving, and some other people will collect up to 2 times. And even when the CBN tried at a point, they introduced a system whereby you have to pay directly, fill a form, and get approval from CBN. Sometimes CBN approve your forms, and the bank is saying, look, they approve it, but they did not make it available for us. So all those things are due to the fact that oversight functions have been compromised. And I think those are part of the legacy that if Cardoso is able to live with us, to create a structure that cannot be compromised.
How would he create the structure? I'm wondering what kind of mechanisms he's going to bring on board when we talk about,
Look, if he that must come to table, he that must come to the table must come with
clean hands.
Once he does that, I think they are forced to comply. What we have seen over the years is that so many of the CBN, you look at the trials that is happening, so many of the CBN officials and even the governors are coping with that. They are part of the system of FX rank tipping, FX racketeers. So until you come to the table and everybody know what you stand for, definitely others are forced to comply. But when you are part of the road, how do you now begin to enforce? That's the challenge.
Okay, so let's even look at the code. It is anchored on 6 core principles: ethics, governance. You talked about it: corporate governance, execution, information sharing, risk management and compliance, confirmation and settlement process. Now, I know you've talked about it, but then let's look at these 6 pointers, and let's, in a way, find out if this is not just another policy, only good on paper. When we talk about implementation of these, and we're seeing internal saboteurs within the system, how do we translate these interesting principles into actionable initiatives, so to speak?
Digitize it, make it digital. I mean, that's the way to go. Once the CBN is open, and it's open, it's like an open book. These days, technology have made it easier. So if all these processes are going to be tied to technology, definitely you see that you're able to know who's there, who's doing this, who's doing that. Not shown in secrecy, whereby I have to take a file, I have to go to compliance, I have to go to, there's a sharing information unit, ethics unit, headed by somebody. Then you go to governance, you go to execution, you go to information sharing, you go to risk management. Create a one-off system that we are able to process this thing up. I don't have to be seen. Once I'm not seen, I can do it at the comfort of my PC or even on my phone. You will see that results will come. It is not compromised. But anything that will involve physical contact is open for compromise. So that is the challenge. I hope the CBN will digitize it, especially the last process, which has to do with confirmation and settlement process, because that is where the compromise and corruption takes place. Because you can go through all this process, and now it's time for confirmation and settlement. That's why going through this process, they will say, "Oh, you're on the line. Somebody came before you," and you're not able to check. Look, let me use a sector I play, the equity market. It's so open that you can know who is buying what. Because on the system, you can see, even when they are crossing a deal, even when they are crossing a share from this place, you can openly see it. It's not hidden. So those are the type of things. If the CBN wants this to work, it has to be an open book. It has to be digitized. We must be able to monitor our processes. On my laptop, I need to know where I am. I'm needing FX. Which area are we in now? Where am I? So once it's open, definitely it will not be compromised.
But Muktar, we saw the introduction of the digitization of a part of the FX, that is the electronic foreign exchange matching systems, called FMs, in December 2024. But still, we're still seeing the naira wobble. We've not seen some sort of appreciation in stride, looking at the value of the naira. So what are the guarantees here?
Lekon, remember what I said when we started? I said, all this policy, if it doesn't drive liquidity into the market, it won't work. The instability in the naira has a lot to do with openness. But when you look at how much percentage of that is the challenge, I think when you talk about corporate governance, talk about ethics, when you talk about compliance, these are just maybe like 10 to 15% the problem. The main challenge with the FX market is liquidity. Once you begin to drive a process, you make it digital, and then there's liquidities available. What is there for me to say, okay, I've gone through the digital process, I've opened process, and it's time for me to get FX. I cannot get it. Demand and supply comes in there, so the price will definitely go up. Or I'm bidding for 5,000, and you're saying, no, I can only get 1,000. So those are the challenges. So that's why I'm saying that any policy from the CBN that will not drive liquidity into the market will not stabilize the exchange rate. The exchange rate process is not just a challenge of ethics, it's not just a challenge of execution, it's not just a challenge of sharing, not just a challenge of risk management. The major challenge in the FX market is liquidity, especially in the retail angle. So until you address that, whatever you are doing is not going to work. So if this process comes in, there are nice processes, you do the administrative process that will not bring liquidity to the market is not going to stabilize the exchange rate.
Well, and we also see that the central bank, for a couple of months now has been working to unify the exchange rates. Now, I'm just wondering if this code will genuinely promote a free markets FX system. Some people feel that, it's more or less like a disguised attempt to retain central control over FX allocations while looking away from one of the issues that you've mentioned, liquidity.
That's exactly, Lincoln. That's why I said that I want to see how transparent and how they want to implement this situation. Because if you're implementing this and you have enough liquidity, then it's open for transparency. Then you're able to see the results. But if you're implementing this and there's no transparency, there's no liquidity, even if there's transparency, there's nothing that's going to work because the rate will keep going up. Look, they know what to do. We must boost the market with liquidity. If there's no liquidity, every exercise we are doing will end up making it maybe worse than where we were before. So we need to make sure that if I'm going to implement a policy, is this policy going to drive more liquidity to the FX market? Will it be also a policy whereby not just driving liquidity into the express market, settlement period will be short because business is all about speed of thought, speed of life. Because business is all about, somebody says, a speed of trust. So if I bid today, am I going to wait 48 hours because I'm going to? So those are what they did. But when there's no liquidity, you may have to wait because you need to make sure that the liquidity for them to credit you. So you look at the retail sector, just a single policy that the CBN did of recent to say, okay, Bureau de Change, we waive up your license renewal fee. And they had some of them have about 2 to 5 million. That money has been able to drive more liquidity into the system because most of them, what they would have done, maybe they would have to change their FX to naira to pay. But now they didn't do that. That is free. So that drives liquidity in this. And you have seen that the market has responded positively to that. So any policy of the CBN that would drive liquidity to the market will respond. When the exchange rate was about 1,900, when CBN decided to pump liquidity through the Bureau de Change, we saw that rate come down to about 1,300. So it's all about liquidity. Let's not shy away from the code is good, but code that will not bring liquidity is not going to work.
Of course. We know that it's all about FX liquidity. Some people will say it's also about boosting the reserves. But then when it comes to implementing these fantastic policies, as some people will put it, that's where the problem is for Nigeria. We're going to pen the conversation here. Muktar Mohammed, it was nice talking to you anyway. You're the CEO of Asher Investment Ltd, and it was nice doing the session with you. Thank you so much for your contribution.
My pleasure always, Lincoln. Do have a pleasant day.
And you too.